Hey friends, Erin here. I'm coming to you from an actually hot day here. I think this might be the first hot day that I've been filming. We are blessed generally with cool breezes here, so it's not very often that it gets quite warm. But today is one of those days, and it's also very bright, so sorry for the sunglasses. So today I'm doing some container maintenance, and I thought I would bring you along to sort of walk you through what I do. Now, when I talk about container maintenance, I'm not just talking about like the regular watering we do, which is very hard to give advice on because the amount of water you need to give any container and how often you need to do it varies so much depending on the size of the container, to the exposure, to the plants that are in it, to what part of the season we're in. I mean, of course, I find myself watering much more towards the end of the season when the roots have filled up most of the pot. And if you're wondering if you need to water, my tried and true method is the old stick your finger in. Works pretty well, and it's always with you. But today I want to start with fertilizing. So in addition to the time-release fertilizer that I put in when I plant basically every container, and I like to use Osmocote for that, once we get into the part of the season where things are really growing, I try to use a water-soluble fertilizer once a week. So I try to just do it on the weekends. I don't hit every weekend. Sometimes I go 2 weeks. I do feel like I notice a difference when I miss one, but that's the goal. And I use the Proven Winners water-soluble fertilizer. I don't know if it's any better than anything else, to be honest. I don't care for Miracle-Gro, I can tell you that. I've never tried the Jacks, honestly. I feel like this works and I'm satisfied with it, so I just keep buying it because I know I'm gonna be happy with what it is. Maybe there's something better out there. Do tell me what your favorite is in the comments. I use a 3-gallon watering can. Actually, I use 2. So I have 2 of these cans so I can be filling up one while I'm pouring out of the other one so that I can kind of get through my fertilizing duties quickly. And it's 1 scoop per gallon, so 3 scoops go in, fill it up with water. You know how to use liquid fertilizer. I actually cut back on the amount of water I was giving these containers because I felt like they were getting potentially a little bit overwatered. So when I was gone, I had someone watering them every day, and I think it was too much water. So it's actually been a couple of days since I've watered these. So the reason I cut back on the water is that I was noticing that the purple Velvine was like just a little bit droopy. Didn't seem to me like it was underwatered, so I was thinking potentially overwatered. And actually this one still looks a little droopy compared to the other one, but we've got lots of flowers, obviously, up here, and we've got lots of vines coming, so I think maybe it was just a little sulky. We're gonna hope that that's the case. So one of the things I do with the vines is any tendrils that are not attaching to the strings, I just create a little string trellis on these. I do wind those up. And, you know, I will go through and just cut off any little ugly bits that are hanging if I feel so inclined. But the other thing I want to do with this container is a little bit of pruning. I feel like what is this, lemon zebra, Selenium jasmoides, which is a kind of like a sweet potato vine, sort of, is getting a little rangy. And the same thing with the wire vine. I feel like both of them are a little bit overgrown. So I'm just gonna go in there and do a little bit of pruning. I think, oopsies. Oops, well that was a kind of a lot of pruning. That was probably good on the pruning, since I just cut like a giant chunk out of it, more than I meant to. I guess that's a lesson, to be careful where you cut with your vines. That does look pretty good though. But what I was trying to say is that I think a lot of people, I don't know, don't think about pruning containers. They just think like, oh, well, that plant's growing a ton and I guess it's just gonna take over the whole container. And that doesn't have to be the case. You can absolutely tame the plants, and I think you should go into your containers and tame the plants that are being a little bit too aggressive, or are just bulking up a little faster than you think they should. Or they just don't look right to you the way they are. Or sometimes I prune them just because they're getting too long. I don't necessarily like my creepers to be, or my trailers to be touching the ground. Now, one other thing I'm not going to do yet, but I might do at some point is, if you see this leaf of, this is Aspidistra Tokyo Skies. You see how this leaf is probably a little bit, damaged, probably getting a little too much sun. I might cut that leaf off. I'm not going to today, but I'm keeping an eye on it, and I probably will in the future. So here's the partner to that pot, and you can see this one's in a little bit more shade. You can see that the zebra vine has gotten a little bit more vigorous here. And actually, interestingly, the Calibracoa is looking a little better over here, which is interesting. And then same as the other one, although potentially more carefully, I will do a little pruning on this. Obviously, this is totally to your taste. Make them look how you want your containers to look. And then on this one, I'm perfectly fine with what the wire vine is doing, so I'm not going to do anything else to this container. All right, obviously, you get the idea of fertilizing. I don't need to show you any more of that. I do fertilize the window box. I try to do it once a week. Sometimes this one gets skipped every other week because I do have to bring a ladder out to do it, because I do it from above with the watering cans. I split it into 2 watering cans, so it does get 3 gallons of fertilizer, but it's split between 2 because I have learned that carrying a full 3-gallon watering can up a ladder is not fun. So I do it that way. But there is some pruning, and I will say that I feel like the window box needs more attention than a lot of other containers in the yard, just because I don't know if it's just mine or my opinion on it, but I feel like it can go wrong pretty quickly, especially if one thing really takes over. So I like to get up on a ladder and futz around with things a little bit. So up here on the ladder, the first thing as I do is I go through like the verbena and make sure that there's nothing that needs to be deadheaded. You don't have to deadhead these superbenas, but it sure works better when you do, to be perfectly honest. The flowers come back much quicker, and I don't like the look of the spent flowers. In here as well, there's a corallina. Now you can see it much better on that side. So what I might do here is kind of get in here and aim this corallina down a little bit more, because of course this whole container is just better, well, it's viewed from below, so you have to take into account that angle. And so sometimes when it grows up here, what I want to do is grab these stems, sort of point them down. Same thing with the licorice plant here, the helichrysum. I prefer that to be sort of intermingled with other plants, so I've been kind of pulling that down a little bit as well. This is, see, we've got some of this way back there, which is doing no good to anybody. So I will kind of push that down this way. If you watched the video where I planted this, I did put some Ogon grass in here. That was basically a waste because you can't see it at all from down here. It looks real pretty up here, but you can't see it from the ground at all. I also will take this this Fiona Sunrise Jasmine. The goal is to get it going up these bamboo stakes, which it's finally starting to do. So I just want to make sure that all of these tendrils down here are sort of pointed up. Eventually, if it gets to the top, it's more than welcome to trail out the sides. That would be a lovely look, but for right now, I want up. The other thing I will do is, like on the scavola, I've been pruning some of these stems that are kind of at the end. I mean, that one's got some flower left on it, but it's getting a little bit straggly, so I'll prune some of those out. Okay, now I'm gonna move down one. Okay, same thing here. By the way, you can see there's some like little casings and stuff on here on the helichrysum. The painted butterfly uses helichrysum as a host plant, so that's probably painted butterfly caterpillars in there. They get to stay. It's just fine with me. So this is more sort of aiming plants in the direction I want them to go here. And in this case, I want this to go this way. Same thing with the secretia. I kind of like some of those to sort of intermingle down this way. There's a nice little bee there on the scaevola. And if there's any flowers that are sort of half spent, I deadhead them anyway, because it's going to be a while before I'm, you know, a week before I'm back up here. Looking pretty good there. Here, this, and any of this scaevola that's just looking a little bit long to me, nip it out. The Evolvus seems to do a pretty good job of deadheading itself, as long as I just give it a little shake. Spent flowers just kind of come off of it. There we go. Okay. There. Fiona Sunrise heading in the right direction. Looking good. All right, and here's the view from the ground. Probably not a big difference from down here. But actually, I see one thing I don't like the scaevola when it starts looking ratty like this here. There we go. There, much nicer. Okay, there's the window box. There's one more container I want to show you. Okay, this is the last container that I want to show you in terms of fertilizing. Same deal. But there are some things that I feel need some attention here. And the first is the Dichondra Silver Falls. I don't care for that look of it, like heavy at the bottom there. And then also I think like we need to tame this mahogany sweet potato vine a little bit. The begonias in here are they're just not growing much, which is a disappointment, to be honest. So I keep trying to make sure that there's room for those begonias to actually flower a little bit. So on this Dichondra Silver Falls, I'm not going to just cut it straight across the bottom. What I do is I try to, you know, get in there and sort of imagine you're getting a haircut and they're putting in layers. So I do some up here and pull it out. And then that kind of overall thins it as well. And it doesn't look like you've just come along and chopped the bottom of your Dichondra. And you can kind of, I mean, any damage you do to this plant, you know it will rebound quickly. And then, like, if I feel like it's feeling a little too full, which I am, then I'll just take a few out, just like I did with the yellow zebra too, or lemon zebra, whatever that's called. As much as I love this Plectranthus here, it is taking up a lot of room, both sun-wise and just soil volume-wise in the container. So I prune it pretty frequently. We've got another begonia back here who is just not getting, this is all part of that same begonia, just not getting a lot of light. But you can see, I think on here, see, we've got some slug damage on some of these leaves. Since I feel like this needs to be thinned out anyway, I'm going to selectively pick out these leaves. And then that will sort of thin this vine out a little bit too. And then if we need to thin more, we can. But you have to have some nice little leaves that are good to get it right. And there's nothing I really need to do on the Fatschedera. It is just growing up all on its own. I did have it tied in to begin with, but it's just heading up all on its own, so I don't feel like I need to tie anything in there. I think everything's looking pretty good there. So I'm going to call that one good. So that's sort of my general container care thing. You know, I used to think that containers weren't meant to be pruned. So if a plant started getting too aggressive for a pot, I'd just say, well, oh well, that kind of overran the whole pot. And then I realized there's no reason you have to do that. You can do whatever you want with them. So if something in your container isn't looking right, just get in there and do a little bit of selected pruning or rearrange things to make the plants lay better. Because you don't have to just plant them and leave them. But what you do need to do is water them, and I need to finish watering all these pots. So I hope that was helpful. Just a little encouragement there to, you know, keep up with your containers. Little bit of fine tuning here and there should prevent some really big holes later on probably, and keep your containers looking good. And see, I don't like that leaf. That's going out of there. All right, have a great day in your garden. Enjoy your containers. Talk to you soon.